Andrew, it is, and as you say, it is a seminal moment. I totally agree with you on that, because we will look back on election night to today and the argument since, between now and the next 12 to 18 months, whenever that election is, to say they were successful in prosecuting that case, or this was the start of the decline. The one thing, you reported earlier the 3 members of caucus who raised concerns about the backflip. You also said, and this is what I've picked up certainly from senior figures in the government right down to humble backbenchers, is that the vast majority of them, and you, as I say, you said this earlier with the caucus feedback you got, that they are supportive. They think they're on the right money here. And as one of them put it to me, they haven't used stage 3 on any of their mail-out material, none of it, because they didn't own it. They didn't think that they could sell it. Now they believe they can. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I did report that the vast majority of caucus have supported it. If things go south in the polls and they lose Dunkley, that won't matter.
Yeah, well, that support probably ebbs away pretty quickly, that's true. But you're right to point to that first big test in the next little while, that being March the 2nd. These moments come at a time in the electoral cycle. We saw Aston when the Prime Minister was flying high. Felt like he was bulletproof. You couldn't get a scenario more different for this by-election on the bay there around Frankston, the seat of Dunkley, Andrew.
And there's only 11 months between the contests, isn't there? So, yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable, that sort of turnaround. But the rate rises have come into play in that time period. And I guess he's had to own a defeat in terms of the voice of the PM. So, but, you know, this has been the story of Australian politics since 2007, as you're well acquainted with, having covered it for longer than that period in the press gallery there, Kieran, is the reversal of fortunes can happen so quickly in Australian politics. People are pretty unforgiving, and this is why I think this is such a big risk. They're unforgiving of broken promises. Don't forget John Howard with the GST. He said never ever the GST, but then he took it to an election. I mean, the PM could have, I guess, talked about an early election with a tax cut change. The superannuation change, the $3 million comes in after the next election, and they made a point of that. They sort of said, well, we're introducing it after the next election. That was for tax over $3 million. This is a much bigger change. So something has to have happened in the Prime Minister's head between the October budget and now. And I think the most likely thing is bad polling in Dunkley and bad focus group research. Because no matter how much these guys deny it, that's what they pay attention to the most. And you and I know that very well, Kieran. And I would say they were looking dicey in Dunkley and they were looking dicey nationally. And that's why the PM's rolled the dice. The other aspect to this I think is important to note is Jim Chalmers has been consistent all the way through. I said he's tied to this decision if it falls over, but he is someone out of this who could say, I've gone with my belief all the way through. In opposition, I argued to change the stage 3 tax cuts. Last year, I argued to change the stage 3 tax cuts. Now I've got my way. Whereas Anthony Albanese and Richard Marles, I believe, had a position to stick with the tax cuts. I do think that for a period there, and you know, this is debatable, but I do think for a period there, Anthony Albanese had decided to stick with the tax cuts as they were. I don't think he necessarily lied prior to that election or immediately after. One of the reasons you can suppose that is he doesn't have to be so emphatic after the election. He was emphatic before the election. That could be a lie. After the election, he's saying to Mark Riley at Channel 7, my bond is my word. He doesn't have to say that. So at that time, and again, people have pointed to comments at National Conference mid-year where he was emphatic about trust with the electorate. So again, I think it is only in recent, I think he could, well, I know that he considered in 2022 when Chalmers was pushing to change the stage 3 tax cuts and decided against it. Something has happened between the October budget and now to change the Prime Minister's mind, and it would indicate that that is driven by, he says it's about the right thing. I would also say to you, Kieran, it is driven by political fear.